senior project in itself is pretty geared toward civic engagement because it's encouraging students, I think, inherently to see themselves as agents of change. In the imagining of the theory of change, they are sort of imagining themselves as part of the solution to this problem. There is a rubric, all right? So you need to take out the packet from Monday on which you were planning your infographics. This infographic will be a smaller piece of the overall presentation in which they talk about their senior capstone work and their plans for post-graduation. The assignment today was I was trying to help students move toward a more tangible representation of that theory of change. And something like an infographic, my hope was that it would be bringing in digital skills, but also be a visual representation that requires you to take something that's really complex and represent it with less text and in a visual way. It's something that a person could look at quickly and say, oh, I understand what they're trying to do here. 6 out of 10 LGBT students feel unsafe at school because of their sexual orientation. So we've got some visuals to represent those concepts. We've got some data. Right? So in today's lesson, the idea was that students would analyze my sample infographic and grade it on the rubric to gain some familiarity with how they would be assessed, and then begin the process of actually creating their own infographic on a website. So think about the categories of the rubric. This is my example that I created. I hope that you all are better. So for the warm-up today, they looked at my infographic in its entirety and then assessed it in each of the categories of content, organization, visuals, and connection between the root cause, issue, and theory of change. And then theory of change, how do we get at the root cause of the issue, right? So if we're thinking about the root cause of homophobia and homophobic bullying, then one way to address it might be to educate kids from a young age about gender, might be to mandate parents and teachers to learn about creating safe spaces for LGBTQ kids, might also be to ensure that LGBTQ people have full rights and change media representations, right? That's one idea of a theory of change. So if that's my infographic, look at your rubric, rank where you think my infographic lands. So just curious, who on content ranked a 2, developing? Why, Juan?
So you talked about how it's in schools, but then you're talking about patriarchy, so I don't think that's to do with schools.
Okay, so I don't make a strong enough connection maybe between the system of patriarchy and specifically how homophobia looks in schools. Okay, fair enough. So what that means for you all is if that connection might be unclear for your audiences, you have to be really clear. So you're making very clear connections between root cause and your issue. Visuals. Nydia, what did you think about visuals?
I said a 2.
Okay. A 2, why?
You use too many different fonts and colors, like right there.
Right, so we have a bold here, we have a non-bold here, we have a bold here, and we have a different font here.
Yeah, because it's like, well, for me, for like if I was reading it, I would feel like the bold is the most important one than the one in the middle.
No, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. So that's something that we have to be really careful about. What we're gonna use is a website with a template, and so it gives us some of that done already. So like this isn't a font I chose, this was the font in the template that I just decided to keep. You all can change this font. So I wanna give you guys a little time to start your own. So I'm gonna give you about 7 minutes, if possible, to finish up your planning sheet. If you're done with your planning sheet already, then holler at me and I'll come and look and sign off. And you can get a laptop and get started. If you're I try to, just for quality control, make sure I look at every student's planning sheet and sign off on it before they get a laptop to begin to do the actual infographic. So when you say teaching the importance of healthy relationships for theory of change, do you have an idea? I can't remember what you said in your theory of change paper for what that would look like. Does that happen in schools? Does that happen in families?
I think I said teaching kids at a young age, but I didn't specify it in schools.
One of the students that I checked in with first, I pushed her a little bit to reframe how would we really think about preventing domestic violence. I think that might be key because in Because if you're talking about doing it in shelters, then that's like once people have already experienced domestic violence, then teaching about healthy relationships, right? So if we're talking about addressing root cause, we want to get at teaching about healthy relationships before domestic violence occurs, right? This is work that does require a lot of constant guidance and checking in, right? Because this is stuff that most grad school students aren't necessarily doing.
This one in the Oakland Hills, the income over 58 has an average of one supermarket per 13,000 residents. And then in East Oakland, there's one supermarket per 93,000 residents.
Yeah. Well, I think even if you just use those two facts, I think that would make a really strong infographic. Maybe just think about how you would represent that visually. So I'm going to continue to circulate and look at folks' planning sheets to make sure that you're ready to start the actual infographic. Once you're ready, you're going to go to magic.pictochart.com. Once you log into Pictochart, there's a bunch of free templates that you can use. So you should take a look and see which template is going to make the most sense for representing your information. This is the template that I used, right? That sort of like says we're starting here and we're going down to here. So once I've signed off on your planning sheet, then you can grab a laptop and begin to lay out your infographic. And we're going to be working on this into Monday, so don't worry, I know that we're just getting started today. Some of the students got to the point of beginning to work on the infographic. Other students were still in the planning process, and they'll continue that work next week. But at the end of class, I had students just do a pair share checking in with each other. Turn to the person next to you and briefly explain your root cause, your issue, and your theory of change.
The root cause is basically how media portrays the usage of drugs and how the society views the usage of drugs, and also the whole issue of drugs like being bad started when President Reagan started the war on drugs in 1971. And my root cause is like how people view the usage of drugs, and my theory of change would be to educate the people about the usage of drugs and the benefits and deficits of it.
It's an activity that if I did it again next year, I might have them do some work in groups so they would be more able to rely on each other's skills and rely on each other as resources as they do this kind of tricky thinking. I think most of our students are really clear that there's injustice in the world that feels really tangible to most of them in their lives. And I think examples of resistance and liberation feel much, much less tangible. And I think a lot of what we need to do as teachers in this work is to bring those examples both from history but also from the present day. We need to lift it up where we see it and be bringing it to our students. Change agents are just people who care about things, who do something about those things.